years back, I was working and managing a clinic, and it was a really pretty toxic work environment. There were a lot of different factors that played into that. For many months, I was pretty depressed. Had a really hard time getting out of bed, had a really hard time wanting to go to work or do anything really. I didn't realize how much of my joy had been sucked out of my life because I was just putting one foot in front of the other, going through the motions. You'd think that as a licensed therapist, I would know when I was depressed, where I was just sitting in my room journaling and praying and crying out to the Lord and saying, I don't understand why you still have me in this situation. A point where I very clearly heard God say, okay, now it's time to go. Yes, I had asked you to stay, and here's the reasons why. And yes, you had gotten to be comfortable, and you didn't like it. My depressed outlook on life hadn't really changed a whole lot, but now it's time to go. I had this really great need to make sure that when I left, my reputation was intact. Because there was so much misunderstanding and so much perspective differences that I didn't feel like my coworkers needed to necessarily agree with my stance or agree with the points that I was making. We could leave agreeing to disagree, but I needed them to understand me. I needed them to see that I had a good heart, because that was what was being questioned. My intentions and my heart. That people thought I didn't care about them. And that was the furthest thing from the truth, both in that particular situation and just who God made me to be. I cared deeply about people. And so when people would make those kinds of comments, or when that was just kind of this underlying belief amongst my staff, that's what I felt like, well, I can't leave until that's fixed. Again, I might not be able to fix all of the actual problems that we are experiencing, all of this interpersonal conflict, but I can't leave with them misunderstanding my heart. God, I just know. You can't ask me to walk away with unfinished business. And I remember it was so clear when God said, okay, it's time to go. It was time to go. I didn't want to, which is hilarious looking back because it was such a bad situation. You would have thought that as soon as the Lord released me, I would have run for the hills. We had been praying for this. And when the answer to prayer came, when God said, okay, I'm releasing you, I just wanted to grip tightly because my narrative, the way that I saw this whole thing playing out, wasn't what was happening. Again, I didn't necessarily think we were going to have this kumbaya, all of us coming together and loving on each other moment. I knew where we were at, but I thought that I was going to be able to at least get them to understand me. The human part of me felt like leaving in that moment was giving up and giving in. Because if I leave and people think that I'm still a pretty rotten person when I know that I'm not, I couldn't see that happening. I felt like, because my reputation, like probably most of us, our reputation is important. And so the thought of leaving when people still thought I didn't care, I was like, God, seriously? You've walked me through staying? You've gotten me to this point where I don't like it, but I understand why you have me here. And now you're just gonna ask me to walk away before it's all tied up in this pretty little bow? It was so hard. And I fought with God about that. The thought of people like having that opinion of me. And I don't know about you, but God often talks to me in these kind of what I call mic drop moments, where he just puts something out there and it's kind of that, like, seriously, girl? This is what we're arguing about? Because do you not see the bigger picture? I think I shared that when I was sharing about my food addiction journey, where he was like, do you love me or do you love chocolate? Come on. And it may sound silly, but I think God just knows me and my personality. And one, I'm a straight shooter, so just say it. And two, I respond really well to that kind of sarcastic humor of like, seriously, this is what we're arguing about? Now that I think about it, that's kind of how I interact with my students sometimes too. So it makes sense that that's how God would interact with me. But as I'm wrestling with this idea of leaving things unfinished, he says to me, do you not think that I was misunderstood? Talking about Jesus. Like, do you not think that I understand everything that you're feeling right now? My reputation was slandered. People didn't understand my heart. People thought I was a liar. And if I, Jesus, can persevere through that kind of persecution and misunderstanding, you can too. It's not all about tying things up in this pretty little bow and moving on your way. Like, not everybody is gonna like you, not everybody's gonna understand you, and you need to allow me, this was the kicker, you need to allow me to protect your reputation. It's not up to you. Now, that's not to say that we don't have choice and responsibility in our actions and the things that we do, right? We don't get to, it's not just a free pass to go around and act whatever and be like, oh, well, God will take care of that. Like, no. We absolutely have responsibility for our actions. But at the end of the day, we are called to be obedient. What I'm talking about is something more to do with our own hearts. Because in those moments when God was asking me to leave, to walk out, I was caring more in that moment about how I, Matina, was being perceived than what God, my Father, was asking me to do. I'm like, yeah, God, I'll follow you once we've wrapped things up over here. Like, once this looks like the way I think it's supposed to look, once I've controlled this narrative, then I'll follow you. And what he was saying to me then, and what I'm encouraging and challenging you in, is go when God tells you to go. Go where he tells you to go. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us. And that is one of the hardest things to come to terms with as a person, and I think particularly as an American Christian, where we live in a world and in a culture that is very much about us and our feelings and our dreams and our rights and our reputations. Talking about when we have a conflict between our flesh and what God is calling us to do. And are you willing to lay your flesh down, to set your pride aside? Because really, that's what it was. If I'm honest with myself, it was pride. I can't leave with people thinking that that's who I am when I know that I'm not. That's straight up pride. How are you laying down your pride to walk in obedience today?